I stared at Alara's phone, and the rage in my veins didn't burn. It froze, hardening into something dense and heavy, like a block of ice forming in my chest. The messages were a brutalist architecture of betrayal. Explicit, unmistakable photos, plans whispered across kilobytes, declarations of passion between her and Julian, her so-called professional partner. One message, a casual postscript to a logistical exchange, seared itself onto my brain. Can't wait for one more night before you head home. Home. To me. To our marriage of 12 years. My hand was steady as I took the screenshots, a methodical documentation of my life's demolition. The storm was inside me, a Category 5 hurricane of shredded trust and suffocating silence, but my exterior was calm. I was a firefighter captain. I knew how to operate in a crisis. The first rule is to control your own breathing. I placed her phone exactly where I'd found it on the nightstand, screen down, charging. She wouldn't be back from San Francisco for 3 more days. Plenty of time for what I needed to do. Some men would scream, would smash things, would call her immediately with choked, furious accusations. Weak men. They would give her the chaotic satisfaction of an emotional breakdown, allowing her to frame their pain as the problem. I wasn't going to give her that. My response would be much more powerful. It would be an act of profound and total silence. My name is Silas. Until almost a year ago, I commanded respect as a fire captain in Denver. I had a beautiful photographer wife named Alara and a life most men would envy. Now, I live off the grid near Flathead Lake, Montana, teaching survival skills to tourists and living entirely on my own terms. Alara and I met during a downtown warehouse fire. She was on assignment for the Denver Chronicle, a Canon lens aimed at the inferno, getting dangerously close to the action. I pulled her back just as a brick wall, superheated and compromised, collapsed exactly where she'd been standing. When the smoke cleared, she'd asked for my number. For a human interest piece, she claimed. 3 months later, we were engaged. For 10 years, we were solid. I climbed the ranks at the fire department. She built her photography business from the ground up. We hiked the Rockies on weekends and talked vaguely about kids someday, a concept that remained a soft-focused dream on a distant horizon. Then, 2 years ago, she landed the contract with the big travel magazine. "This changes everything, Si," she'd said the night she got the news, her eyes electric with ambition. It did change everything, but not in the way either of us expected. The first assignments were manageable. A week photographing wildlife in Yellowstone, 10 days capturing the glacial blues of Alaska. She'd return home energized, and we'd reconnect with an intensity that felt like a validation of our strength. Then the trips grew longer. 2 weeks in Costa Rica, 3 in Kenya. "It's the nature of the work," she'd explain whenever I questioned the extended absences. "You can't rush the perfect shot." I understood timing. As a firefighter, timing was everything. When to advance into a blaze, when to retreat, when to change tactics based on the groaning language of a burning structure. So, I adapted. I built my own routines, focused on my career. Then came the San Francisco project. 6 months documenting urban renewal, requiring weekly trips to the Bay Area, and Julian Sloan entered our story. "He's the writer paired with me for the series," Alara explained over dinner after her first week. "Used to work for the New Yorker." I caught the way her eyes lit up when she mentioned him, the slight, almost imperceptible flush in her cheeks. I saw it all, but I said nothing. Observation is a survival skill. In the weeks that followed, Julian became a recurring character in our conversations. "Julian thinks my composition is revolutionary," she'd drop casually. "Julian says we might win an award for this." Julian took me to this amazing spot in Chinatown. Strictly professional, of course. Oh, I've never been the jealous type. In firefighting, trust is everything. You need absolute, unshakable confidence in your team when you enter a burning building. I extended that same trust to my marriage. Even when she started taking his calls in other rooms. Even when our sex life became scheduled rather than spontaneous. Even when she began returning from her trips with a different energy, a distracted gloss over her gaze. Until I saw the messages on her phone while it was charging. The morning of her flight, I kissed her goodbye as usual. "I love you," she said casually, the words now feeling like cheap props on an elaborate stage. "Safe travels," I replied, my voice even, already executing my exit strategy in my mind. Once her flight status showed departed, I moved with military precision. I logged into our joint bank account and transferred exactly half the balance to my personal account. Not a penny more, not a penny less. This was not about punishment, it was about severance. I packed one large duffel bag with essentials. Durable clothes, my grandfather's watch, a few $100s in cash, and my survival gear. I called my fire chief and submitted my resignation, citing a personal emergency that required my immediate and indefinite absence. He was shocked but respected my record enough not to press for details. Finally, I left a brief note from my younger brother Finn, a former Marine who understood the need for a clean break. Need to disappear for a while. I'm okay. We'll contact when I can. Then I drove northwest with no destination beyond away from here. Away from her. Away from the hollowed-out structure of a life built on a lie. I was performing a controlled demolition of my own existence. 11 months can strip a man down to his core. Living in near isolation, working with your hands, being forcibly removed from the identity that once defined you, it reveals who you really are beneath the titles and relationships. It's a forge. It either breaks you or tempers you into something stronger. I landed in Kalispell, Montana, by necessity when my truck's alternator died. With limited cash, I found work at a sporting goods store, then later at The Lodge, an upscale resort where wealthy tech executives paid premium rates for authentic wilderness experiences. Morgan, the lodge owner, hired me immediately after I demonstrated how to build a friction fire with a bow drill. She was in her late 30s, with an air of confident capability and eyes that saw more than they let on. These guys will pay $2,000 a weekend to learn how to make fire without matches, she'd explained pragmatically. You're competent and you keep to yourself. When can you start? Morgan was attractive, and she flirted occasionally, but she respected the clear, unbreachable boundaries I established. Whoever she was, she did quite a number on you, she remarked once, after I'd politely declined a third dinner invitation. Is it that obvious? You've got that look, she said, sipping her coffee. The look of someone who survived an explosion but is still checking for shrapnel. No rush. Some wounds need proper time to heal. Time was something I had in abundance. I built a new routine, up at dawn, physical work until my muscles burned with a clean, honest exhaustion. Minimal social interaction. I grew a beard, lost the softness city life had given me, and gained lean muscle from daily labor. I also started keeping a journal. It wasn't a diary of feelings, but a tactical log. A place to organize my thoughts, to process everything without the noise of well-intentioned advice from others. I wrote about the rage that ran cold rather than hot, about calculating precisely how to remove myself from a situation rather than trying to destroy it. I wrote about strategic thinking versus emotional reaction. I wrote until I understood my own power, the power of absence. I maintained absolute radio silence on all fronts. No social media, no Google searches of her name. Complete severance was the only path forward. I bought a basic prepaid phone for emergencies and gave the number only to Finn with strict instructions. She's looking for you, he told me during one of our brief monthly calls. Hired a private investigator. She knows why I left, I stated. It wasn't a question. She showed up at my place crying. Finn said, a note of disgust in his voice, claiming you disappeared without explanation. Wanted to know if you were safe. What did you tell her? That you're alive, and that's all she gets to know. Good man, Finn. You planning to come back, Si? There's nothing to come back to. What I didn't share with Finn was that I'd found an unexpected, profound peace in this new existence. The lodge attracted an interesting clientele, and I developed a reputation as a skilled, reserved, and unquestionably in-control guide. Female guests occasionally showed interest, a flicker of curiosity in their eyes. I declined every advance without explanation. For the first time since meeting Alara, I was focused entirely on my own path, rather than accommodating someone else's journey. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd had to lose everything to reclaim my independence. Winter arrived in Montana with brutal efficiency, and the isolation intensified with the shortened days. I'd grown comfortable with the solitude, until the day she found me. It was the 18th of December. I was checking in a family from Minnesota when the front door of the lodge opened, bringing a blast of frigid air and the last person on earth I ever expected to see. Ellara stood in the entryway, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. She was thinner than I remembered, her face etched with a new uncertainty as her eyes met mine. She wore a red wool coat I didn't recognize, her hands gripping the handle of a small suitcase. Time compressed. The family at the counter faded to background noise. My body instinctively tensed, every muscle coiled. ready for a confrontation I had spent nearly a year avoiding. After the Minnesota family moved away, she approached the desk. There was no dramatic greeting, no tears, just 3 practical words. "Room for one," she said quietly. I could have refused her. I could have told her to leave. I could have demanded to know how she found me. Instead, I methodically entered her information into the system, my face a mask of professional indifference. I swiped her credit card and handed her a key. Cabin 8, last one on the left path. Breakfast starts at 7. My voice remained level, giving away nothing of the seismic shock vibrating through my system. "Thank you," she replied, her fingers briefly touching mine as she took the key. She hesitated. "You look good, Silas." Ember. I offered no response, just a directional nod toward the cabins. She left without another word. I maintained my composure until I reached the staff bathroom, where my stomach heaved once in a violent, physical rejection of her sudden appearance. I was washing my face with cold water when Morgan found me. "That woman who just checked in," she said, her voice direct. "She's your past, isn't she?" I nodded once, drying my hands with meticulous care. "Want me to tell her we're overbooked? Make her leave?" I considered it. The thought of her presence here felt like a contamination of the sanctuary I had built. But I had been outrunning this for almost a year. Maybe it was time to face it. "No," I said, my voice firm. "Time to face it, head on." That night, I didn't sleep. I paced my small cabin, calculating the distance between my door and cabin 8. What was her purpose here? What could she possibly want after all this time? By dawn, I had made my decision. I would hear her out, say what needed to be said, and then continue forward. I'd reclaimed my life once. I could do it again. She was waiting in the empty dining room when I arrived. I began making coffee with precise, deliberate movements, maintaining the counter as a physical barrier between us. "You found me," I stated. "It took longer than I expected." "You disappeared thoroughly," she said, studying me. "The beard suits you. Why are you here, Alara?" Direct, no preamble. She took a measured breath. "Not to beg for forgiveness. Not to try winning you back. You deserve better than that." "What I deserved was a wife who didn't cheat," I responded, my voice cutting like a shard of glass. She flinched but maintained eye contact. "Yes, you did." The simple, unadorned acknowledgement caught me off guard. "I'm here because you vanished without an explanation. Because I returned to an empty house and a missing husband. For weeks, I thought you might be dead." "You know exactly why I left," I stated flatly. "Now I do. But I didn't then." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Convenient. I saw everything, Alara. The messages, the photos, all of it." She closed her eyes briefly. "I knew something was wrong that morning before my flight. My phone had been moved. But you acted completely normal." "We're not doing this here," I said, my voice low as early guests began to enter. "I'm working until 3. Cabin 14 is empty for maintenance. Meet me there if you want to talk." She nodded. I spent the morning splitting logs, the rhythmic impact of the axe, a satisfying outlet for the turmoil inside me. At precisely 3, Alara arrived at cabin 14. I had a fire going, needing the occupation for my hands. "How did you find me?" I asked immediately. "Does it matter?" "Humorme," she sighed. "Your credit card. One transaction for gas in Missoula last January. By the time the investigator tracked it, the trail was cold. Then Finn, he let slip. You were somewhere near Flathead. I've been searching the area for months, staying in different towns, showing your photo. A waitress in Kalispell recognized you." I nodded, making a mental note of the security breach. "I could disappear again within hours if necessary." "Your turn," she said. "Why leave like that, Silas? Why not confront me?" I stared into the flames. What would confrontation have accomplished? You would have lied, like you'd been lying for months. You'd have minimized it, or somehow twisted it to blame me. Maybe you'd have promised it would never happen again. I fixed her with a direct gaze. "But it wasn't a mistake, was it? It was a deliberate choice you made, repeatedly." She didn't attempt to deny it. "You're right, it wasn't a one-time thing." How long?" 4 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 4 months of deception. "Did you love him?" The question emerged before I could stop it. "I thought I did," she admitted quietly. "I convinced myself it was something meaningful, not just a cheap betrayal. That made it easier to justify. And now Now I know. It was neither love nor special. Just selfish destruction. She leaned forward. I'm not here to win you back, Silas. I'm here because you should know that I lost more than you. I lost myself. Spare me the victim narrative, Alara. It's not victimhood. It's truth. Her voice hardened. Julian dumped me 2 weeks after you disappeared. Said things were too complicated. The magazine dropped our project when rumors spread. I lost 3 other contracts. I had to sell the house. I spent months in therapy trying to understand why I destroyed everything good in my life. Am I supposed to feel sorry for you? No, she said, her eyes glistening. You're supposed to understand that your disappearance was the most powerful response anyone could have ever given me. You didn't rage or threaten. You simply removed yourself from the equation. You left me to face exactly who I'd become without the benefit of making you the villain. Silence filled the room. Outside, heavy snowflakes began to fall. I'm not the same man who left Denver, I finally said. I know. I'm not the same woman either. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. I wrote everything down. Things I couldn't say. What happened with Julian? What happened after? You can read it or burn it. Your choice. She placed it on the table between us. I'm staying 3 days. Then I'll go, and you'll never have to see me again if that's what you want. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, Silas, I've never regretted anything more in my life. After she left, I stared at the envelope for hours. Eventually, I picked it up and placed it, unopened, in my jacket pocket. Some truths required proper timing. That night, in the solitude of my cabin, I finally opened Alara's letter. 8 pages in her familiar script, detailing everything without excuses. How the affair began. How Julian made her feel seen in ways she hadn't realized were missing. How she compartmentalized her life, convinced she could maintain both worlds. Then came the aftermath. Julian's abandonment, the professional ruin, the crushing realization that she'd traded substance for illusion. The final paragraph struck with precision. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness, but you should know that your silence was more powerful than any rage could have been. You forced me to judge myself without the distraction of your anger. There was no one to blame, just the pure consequence of my actions reflected in an empty house. It broke me in ways I needed to be broken. I hope someday you find happiness again. You, more than anyone I've known, deserve it. I read the letter 3 times, then went outside and split wood in the moonlight until my muscles screamed for relief. The next day, a massive snowstorm hit the region. The lodge lost power. We advised guests to remain in their cabins. I was helping Morgan distribute extra blankets when I realized Alara was nowhere to be seen. She went for a walk early this morning, one of the housekeepers said, mentioned something about wanting to see the North Trail before she left. The North Trail. 5 miles through dense forest. Dangerous in a storm. How long ago? I demanded, already reaching for my gear. 4, maybe 5 hours. Morgan caught my expression. Silas, you are not going out in this. I have to. She doesn't know these woods. Visibility is 0. Temperatures are dropping. You could both end up dead. And I'll take the emergency radio and GPS, I said, already layering up. If I'm not back in 3 hours, call search and rescue. Morgan knew better than to argue further. She helped me pack, her expression grim. She must still mean something to you. She was my wife for 12 years, I replied with a finality that brooked no further discussion. My past self might have done this out of lingering love. My current self was doing it because it was a problem to be solved, a life to be saved. It was a tactical operation. The moment I stepped outside, the storm's ferocity hit me. Wind-driven snow stung any exposed skin. I moved toward the North Trail, pushing through knee-deep drifts. 2 miles in, I found her first sign. A red scarf, the same red as the coat she'd worn, caught on a branch. My focus sharpened. Another half mile and I spotted footprints veering off trail, a classic sign of disorientation. The tracks led toward a cluster of large boulders. There I saw her, a huddled figure, partially covered in snow. Her face was dangerously pale, her lips tinged with blue. She was conscious, shivering violently. Silas? She slurred. How? Tracking, I said simply, unfolding an emergency thermal blanket and wrapping it around her. Can you walk? She tried. Her legs collapsed. Can't feel my feet. Not a problem. I've got you. I lifted her. She felt impossibly light. As I began the grueling journey back, carrying her against my chest, she mumbled against my shoulder. So stupid. Thought I'd be back. Less talking about mistakes, more focusing on staying awake, I directed. Why'd you come for me? She asked after what felt like an eternity. Could've. Let me disappear too. That's not who I am, I stated firmly, adjusting my grip. Never was. Her next words were a faint whisper, almost lost in the wind. That's why I loved you. Still do. Oh. I didn't respond. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, navigating through the whiteout. When the lights of the lodge finally appeared, relief nearly buckled my knees. Morgan and 2 staff members rushed out, taking Alara from my arms. I remained in the doorway, watching as they worked on her by the fire. Her eyes found mine across the room, a look of gratitude, pain, and 1,000 unspoken words. I turned away, needing distance to process what had just happened. I had risked the new life I'd built for the woman who had destroyed the old one. The core of my identity as a rescuer, the very thing that had defined me as a fire captain, was still there. But this time, I had made the choice with cold, clear-eyed calculation. The storm trapped us at the lodge for 2 more days. I maintained a professional distance from Alara, encountering her only at mealtimes. On the afternoon the roads were finally cleared, I found her in the lobby, suitcase packed. I guess this is goodbye then, she said. I guess it is. We stood in a moment of compressed history, 12 years of a shared life suspended in the air between us. I have something for you, I said decisively, reaching into my pocket and handing her a small, worn notebook. My first journal from my time here. Maybe it'll help you understand. Impulsively, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed my cheek. A ghost of a touch I neither welcomed nor rejected. Be happy, Silas, she whispered. I watched her drive away until her taillights vanished. That night, I started a new journal. The first entry was direct. Today, I buried the past. Not with forgiveness. I'm not there yet. But with clarity. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Finn. His voice was uncharacteristically tentative. Si, you sitting down? My body tensed. What happened? It's Alara. She was in an accident on I-25. Head-on collision with a drunk driver. The world shifted, the ground beneath me feeling suddenly unstable. She's alive, but it's critical, Si. Multiple surgeries. They're uncertain. Who else knows my location? I demanded, my voice cold and tactical. Just me. Her sister Chloe called me. She asked for your number. Said Alara's been asking for you. I closed my eyes. Images flashed. Alara laughing in our kitchen, sleeping beside me, walking away from the lodge. Ghosts. Give Chloe my number, I decided. Even as I said it, I found myself checking flight times from Kalispell to Denver. Chloe called an hour later, her voice raw. Silas, I don't know if you'll come, but she keeps asking for you. The doctors, they're advising us to prepare for the worst. I paced my cabin for hours, wrestling with the decision. Part of me, the new man forged in Montana, wanted to remain detached, to protect the life I'd built. But another part, the strategist, recognized that without a proper final closure, her ghost would haunt me indefinitely. By morning, I had booked a flight. This was not a rescue mission. It was an extraction. I was going to extract her memory from my future. Chloe, her sister, met me at the hospital entrance. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for coming. How is she? My tone was neutral. Critical. Internal bleeding, collapsed lung, spinal injury. She gestured toward the ICU. She's heavily medicated. She may not recognize you. The woman in the hospital bed barely resembled Alara. Her face was a canvas of bruises, tubes, and wires, connecting her to a symphony of beeping machines. I approached the bed and, after a moment's consideration, placed my fingers against her uninjured hand. Her eye fluttered open. Recognition dawned slowly. Silas, she breathed. You came. I came, I confirmed. I sat with her through the afternoon, a silent, detached presence. When I spoke with Chloe in the waiting area, I was blunt. I'm returning to Montana tomorrow, I stated. I can't be a part of this long term. Chloe's eyes flashed with anger. So, you're just going to leave her like this when she might be dying? I'm not responsible for her recovery, Chloe. My voice remained level. I came to say goodbye properly. That's all I can offer. She still loves you. That's unfortunate for her, I said, the coldness of the words surprising even myself. Chloe stared at me, shocked. You've changed. Yes, I said, for the better. When I returned to Alara's room, she was awake, her gaze fixed on the door. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Tomorrow morning. She nodded slightly, wincing. I understand. You've rebuilt your life. I have no place in it. Her voice was stronger, as if gathering her remaining energy. I wouldn't want you to stay out of pity. Good, because I won't. I'm sorry, Silas, for everything. I know you are, I said, but that doesn't change anything. One more thing, she continued, gesturing weakly toward the cabinet beside her bed. Top drawer. I opened it and found a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside were legal documents, property transfer papers for a small cabin on 10 acres near Estes Park that we had bought together years ago, a forgotten dream. A note was clipped to the papers. This was our dream once. Now I want you to have it without conditions. It's yours, whether you ever speak to me again or not. Consider it my final severance from our past. Open it later when you're home, she said. I should go. Let you rest. Will I see you before you leave tomorrow? I considered lying, offering a small false comfort. Instead, I gave her the truth. Number this is goodbye, Ilara. A single tear escaped her undamaged eye. She nodded. I understand. Thank you for coming at all. Take care of yourself, Ilara. I told you too, Silas. She managed a small smile. Be happy. You deserve it. I left without looking back, ignoring Chloe's accusing stare as I walked out of the ICU and out of her life for the final time. My flight back to Montana left early the next morning. I didn't call the hospital. Some endings need to be clean. Morgan met me at the small Kalispell airport, leaning against her truck with her usual casual confidence. Welcome back, she said simply. Everything handled? Yes, I replied, tossing my duffel into the truck bed. Permanently. She studied me for a moment before starting the engine. You look different, lighter, somehow. I made some necessary decisions. About my ex, about my future. Morgan nodded, seeming to understand the distinction. Good. Speaking of futures, there's an instructor position opening up at the Mountain Rescue Training Center near Whitefish. The director's an old friend, mentioned you might be perfect for it. I considered it. Professional advancement, better pay, work that was perfectly aligned with my skills. Sounds interesting. They're looking for someone who can start next month. She glanced at me. If you're planning to stick around, I am. A genuine smile, the first I'd seen from her since before Ilara's appearance, lit up her face. Glad to hear it. I'd hate to lose my best survival instructor. Is that all you'd hate to lose? I asked, surprising myself with the directness. Her eyes widened slightly before she recovered her composure. That depends on what's being offered. Dinner tonight, just us. She pretended to consider it, though a slight flush in her cheeks betrayed her. I think that could be arranged. As we drove through the snow-covered landscape, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Possibility. Not a return to what was, but the potential for something entirely new, built on a stronger foundation. 2 weeks later, I received a brief message from Chloe. Ilara's out of critical condition. Long recovery ahead, but doctors are optimistic. Thought you should know. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. That chapter was closed. That same day, I formally accepted the position at the Mountain Rescue Training Center and signed the papers accepting ownership of the Estes Park cabin. Not as a connection to Ilara, but as an asset, a resource I could use or sell entirely on my own terms. That night, Morgan and I hiked to a ridge overlooking Flathead Lake. The sunset painted the frozen surface in brilliant oranges and fiery reds. Beautiful view, she commented, standing close enough that our shoulders touched. New perspective, I replied, and we both knew we were talking about more than just the landscape. She turned to face me, her expression open but cautious. Is this really what you want, Silas? No lingering ghosts? I considered the question seriously, looking out at the vast wilderness. I've dealt with my ghosts. I've made peace with the past by cutting it away. I'm ready for what's next. And what is next? She asked softly. I gestured toward the horizon spreading before us. This, now, the life I've chosen, not the one I lost. She smiled, a slow, real smile that reached her eyes. I can work with that. As the last light faded from the sky, I felt the final, clinging weight of my old life lift away. I had disappeared once out of necessity. Now, I was reappearing by choice, stronger, clearer, and entirely on my own terms. It was enough. It was more than enough.